I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. You will most likely hate this movie. However, you should still go watch this movie. Megalopolis was surrounded by controversy. Currently, Megalopolis sits at a 6.2 on IMDb and 51% on Rotten Tomatoes as of recording this video. And I can completely understand why. How does a film that took approximately 3 decades end up as something that lacks focus, with clunky dialogue, and yet somehow has a sort of charm to it? In this video, I'm gonna attempt to explain why, even though this movie is something you might not like, it's still something that's worth watching in theaters. Let me explain. So Megalopolis comes from the director of Apocalypse Now and the Godfather movies, Francis Ford Coppola. And this is a movie that's set in New Rome, which is basically supposed to be modern day New York City. The film follows a genius architect named Caesar Catalina, who's developed a material called Megalon and has dreams of changing the world by rebuilding New Rome into Megalopolis. The antagonist of the film, the mayor, is played by Giancarlo Esposito, whose goal is to keep the city the same. Things take a turn when his daughter Julia Cicero decides to team up with Caesar to help his dreams come to life against her father's wishes. Along the way, Aubrey Plaza wants Caesar to herself, and Shia LaBeouf plays Caesar's cousin, who's a politician that wants to foil Caesar's construction of Megalopolis, hoarding all of the family wealth. Now, this is one of those instances where how the movie was made influences why you should go see the movie, even if at the end of it you think it's bad. Megalopolis was about 30 years in the making, and in Coppola's journal from 1992, he wrote this: "The question is, can you make bigger films like Megalopolis?" Coppola put up $120 million of his own money to get this film made, which is pretty much unheard of. And since I got to see the film a little bit early, in my showing we got a live interview from Francis Ford Coppola. This movie also did something I've never seen before in a theatrical release. During the movie, there was a scene where Adam Driver is answering a question from a publicist, and some dude in real life walks up to the screen, asks the question, and Adam Driver interacts with it. So I'd be very curious to see how this plays out as time goes on, because I doubt that every single theater is gonna have this. But overall, this movie felt like a stage play, and that's something that I'm gonna hammer on a little bit later. It's very clear that this movie's trying to draw analogies to the United States being a current day Rome, and they do that through the architecture, the clothing, even in the characters' names. One of my favorite aspects of the film was the costumes. In this world, the society's elites had like a gaudy neo-Roman aesthetic to them. I thought it was cool that whenever Megalopolis was depicted, it felt like natural structures, something that would be a part of nature. Ironically, I thought the idea of the Megalopolis city was ugly. There's sequences where it showed up as concept art, and it really just reminded me of the meme "Society if blank." I don't know, maybe it's a stretch, but this movie goes through a lot of lengths to remind us about Rome/Italy, and it even starred one of our favorite Italians, Giancarlo Esposito. It was nice seeing him play a character that wasn't just cold and calculated the entire time. Like, yeah, he has those elements, but we see that he cares for his daughter and the city of New Rome. I thought Nathalie Emmanuel was an interesting choice for the role of Julia. I'm only really familiar with her because of the Fast and Furious roles. Then we get Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, as the main character, Caesar Catalina. He doesn't do anything I've never seen him do before. He's a great actor, he's just Adam Driver doing whatever the script told him to do. But I think the subtext of Adam Driver and Nathalie Emmanuel's character was a little bit cheesy. Adam Driver's name is Caesar, and then Nathalie Emmanuel's character's name is Julia.
Ego Caesar.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I don't know, I found that a little bit cheesy on the nose. Again, it calls back to a lot of Roman aesthetic, and it does it a lot to the point where it's like, all right, bro, I get it, I get it. When I was watching this movie, I felt like I was watching a stage play. The way the actors moved and spoke, it was like the movie kept calling attention to itself. Like, I knew I was watching a movie. I could feel like I was watching a movie. I was never fully able to immerse myself into this world that it was attempting to build. And then the dialogue called attention to itself in a way that I don't think that it meant to. Like throughout the entire film, I wouldn't have been surprised if these characters broke out into a song and dance. There were moments in the film where the characters would respond to each other and it would sound like that wasn't the proper response, like they pressed the wrong dialogue option in a video game. It almost feels like the George Lucas Star Wars prequels.
You're so beautiful.
It's only because I'm so in love.
No, it's because I'm so in love with you.
At times as I was watching the movie, it felt like I was watching what a rendition of books like 1984, especially A Brave New World. I bring all that up because in this movie, it feels like it's trying to be those books, the classical sci-fi literature that are also must-read commentaries on society. In fact, I think this movie has so many ideas that it almost would have worked better as a book. It's clear Coppola is trying to draw parallels to Rome, but it's so on the nose that it feels lazy. I honestly think the video essays that'll come from this movie are gonna be very interesting. But at the same time, I don't think this film is as smart as it thinks it is. With this film, Coppola brings up themes of art and its place in the world, money, immigration, entertainment, time, and another thing being sexuality and its relation to decadency. But all of those ideas that come up in this movie amount to nothing. A ton of missing plot points. We have this looming threat at the start of the film, and then nothing. There's a subplot of Caesar's wife. It's brought up, then that's it. There's a massive turn of events for Caesar, and then in a few scenes, that's it. There was little to no cohesion in this film. The film felt like it was holding my hand the entire time, and it just also at the same time felt pretentious. There were moments in the film where the director would low-key call attention to himself, and everyone in the theater would just start laughing. In fact, there were moments in the movie that were so out of place that the movie almost felt like a parody. My theater wouldn't stop laughing at moments that were clearly trying to take itself seriously, but I think that's partially because this movie kept trying to make itself seem bigger than it actually was. The movie tells us that it wants us to think, which is admirable, but it was done in such a clunky way. For a movie that was 30 years in the making, I wish the film was tighter, which brings up the problem of trying to do too much. I think since Coppola's had this idea for so long, in his mind, he felt pressured to make the movie as grand as he could make it. The CG felt shisty at some moments. Then there were also times where I was just completely distracted because the ADR was just completely off. It was very clear that the lips weren't matching what they were actually saying. This movie was like a fever dream. A lot happens and then we get to the end and it also feels like nothing happened at the same time. But with all of its flaws, I do think that if you have the funds, you should go out and watch this movie, in theaters specifically. Reason being is because the movie is trying to be this grand epic. And so if you try to watch it on streaming or on your phone later on, it kind of loses that effect it was going for. I also think you should go watch this movie because even though you might not like it, it is something that will make conversation, if anything. The film is admirable because you can tell it was made by someone that loves movies. My tip to you, watch this movie in theaters, sit on it, and don't let anyone tell you to look at the film through a black and white lens. Catch this movie at a matinee or on a Tuesday when the tickets are half off. Go with friends so that afterwards you have something to talk about, but I do recommend this movie. If you enjoyed this episode, click this video, and I'll see you in the next encounter.